Well, here we are, and welcome once again to What Nobody Told Me After 65. It's your lady on the go, lady in the know, Miss Info. This is the Information Nation, where knowledge is shared and wisdom exchanged for the betterment of the people. Let's get started. Today, I want to talk to you about the prison system in the U.S. and its effects on the little guy, me and you, the family of the person who's locked up. Yeah. This is part one of part two, and I'm going to tell you why. Because there is so much information that you don't know that I'm going to uncover that it's going to take two broadcasts to get it all out there. Yeah. There are thousands of legal systems, not just one, thousands of them. And the reason that there's thousands of them is because they're all run by different portions of the federal government or the private enterprise. And let me explain. There are 1.9 million people incarcerated in 1,566 states, in 98 federal prisons, in 3,116 local jails, in 1,323 juvenile facilities, 142 immigration detention centers, and 80 Indian County jails. That doesn't account for military prisons or other holding facilities. This costs a combined $182 billion each year. 1.9 million people are incarcerated, and it costs $182 billion to keep them that way. So, how many people are actually locked up? State, local, and federal. State prisons account for over 1 million incarcerated people. Local, about 500,000, and federal, just under 250,000. There is an enormous revolving door surrounding the prison system. You go in and you come out. You go in and you come out. You know why? Because a lot of these numbers are repeat offenders because of probation. That's another booming industry. Probation. They used to put you on probation and it was free. Now you get on probation, you got to pay a monthly fee. Yes. Oh, we're going to get into that. Jails versus prisons. There is a difference. In 2022, 469,000 people entered the prison system, but more than 7 million went to jail. You understand what I'm saying? 469,000 entered the prison system, but 7 million went to jail. Those are local jails. They are the proverbial front door to prison. Yeah. Private versus public. Let's talk about that for a minute. Remember when, back in the day, I say back in the day, you went to jail, you went to prison. I got a friend calls it the penitentiary. He's still calling it the penitentiary. But you went to prison, there was one prison system. Now, because it got privatized, now only 8% are publicly owned. 8%. Some cities rent space to other agencies, including state prison systems. They're making money everywhere, all over the place. Private companies are frequently granted contracts to operate prison food and health services, commissary, and the dreaded telecom. That's the phone system. Oh, we're going to talk about them. These services alone have spawned multi-billion-dollar private industries. By privatizing services like phone calls, medical care, commissary, and even mail. I'll tell you about mail. Prisons and jails are offloading the cost of incarceration, the cost of doing business, onto incarcerated people and their families. Now, here's where the wheels came off for me. I have biological children and I have foster children, but I'm mom nonetheless. I have given all of my male children a pass. One pass. You get locked up, mommy will be there. One time. And one time only. Now, my son went to jail. The local jail. He went to court and they sentenced him to the big house. I attempted to call him. I had to register, sign up, get a passcode, get a separate phone number to make a phone call through this telecom system. I had to put money on a card at this telecom system. Some money is still sitting there. Imagine when he got out, I forgot about it. How many parents do that? And they keep the money. That's something I got to check into. Telecom. And don't talk about commissary. Same situation. Money goes on the books. They might eat some of that mess they got that they selling them, heart attack food. They buy it. They making a little boona or whatever they making. They get out. They're so doggone glad to get out of there. Who cares what's on the books? I do. And you should too. And this doesn't affect just black, white. It affects brown, Asian, Latino. Come on. This is across the board. So, the reason why I got to do two parts is because I'm just now getting to the meat of my report. It's a lot to cover. And it's actually an Achilles heel in my life. Always has been. I used to tell my young men, know your rights. If you get stopped, know what you have to say, what you can't say. I also encourage them to stay. Do your time. Don't come out on probation. Don't, because you can't do it. 24 years old, 25 years old, you got to be in the house by 8 o'clock. Really. That's what gets them most of the time. It's summertime. You're sitting out on the steps. You missed the phone call. It's summertime. You at your girlfriend's. You missed the curfew. You're going back to jail. All right. Woo. So, privatization of these services are under private companies. And private companies are not subject to transparency rules and laws or the Freedom of Information Act because they are not a government entity. They are private. So, your loved one is locked up and something happened to him? Good luck trying to find out what happened, what was the circumstances, who was responsible. These people are not required to provide you any information under the Freedom of Information Act. And anything that they give you is gratis because, okay, maybe. I remember working for my church in crisis intervention, and I called a privately owned homeless shelter. They're out there too. And I said, I need to know if you have a bed for a young lady we have. And the gentleman, he was sort of rude. Well, we might, but we don't just give beds to people walking in off the street. Then what's the purpose of your organization, sir? And he went on to tell me, we don't have to answer to you or anybody else. We don't receive any federal money. Click up and hung up on me. Needless to say, I did investigate and found out that he was right. And I'll tell you that they were affiliated with the Salvation Army. All right. So, these people can hide, under the guise of being a private company. They are not branches of the government. In an article that was published in September the 28th of 2022 on a website called procon.org, according to this article, and I quote, private prisons have their roots in slavery, unquote. Recaptured runaways were often held in private facilities. Many plantations were turned into private prisons from the Civil War going forward. For example, Angola Plantation in Louisiana later became Louisiana State Penitentiary, nicknamed Angola for the African homeland of many of the slaves. Now, this is a sidebar, but relevant, so that's why I pointed it out. Private companies that run prisons are corporations, and they have a bottom line to make money. Corporate greed is rampant in these situations. And I'm going to tell you another story in a minute. They're not looking at the quality of the service they provide. They're looking at their bottom line. Of course, they have investors and board members and folks to answer to. They pay less, they train less, and want more. But get this, their turnover rate is 43%, almost half. Nobody even want to work for them. Yeah, 43%. A 2019 study shows that state prisons cost about $45 per inmate per day. What does it cost under private? $49.07 per inmate per day. They're not saving that much money. But they use this as an excuse. In the Minnesota Reformer, and you can look it up because I'm not going to have time to go through the whole article, but check this out. The MinnesotaReformer.com. In February of 2024, the headlines read, quote, Minnesota made phone calls free, prison phone calls free, but telecom's price gouging continues. Let me read that again. Minnesota made prison phone calls free, but telecom's price gouging continues. The State Department of Correction in Minnesota collected thousands in kickbacks. Records show telecom brought in $3 million in revenue from the prison phone services, video calling, and e-messaging. For-profit telecom companies are making millions off incarcerated people and their families, because we're the ones that suffer. They are called a captive audience. They, meaning the incarcerated individuals, are being called a captive audience for a reason. Soon, Wall Street will be looking at how they can capitalize on them too. That's why this is only part one. I've only hit the tip of the iceberg. They're making money off of locking people up. Now, I don't agree that locking you up reforms you. I don't believe that at all. As a matter of fact, it does just the opposite in our community. You go in an unknown criminal with no history and don't know nothing, you're going to get schooled while you're in there. And by the time you get out, you's ready. And you're just going to come back until you figure it out. So, reform, I don't believe that locking people up reforms anything. All it does is make a niche market for some enterprising company to come along and get our hard-earned dollars. I ain't stole nothing. I ain't robbed nobody. I'm not in jail. Why are you charging me to talk to my son? Why are you charging my son to talk to me? It's a big business. It's a big, nasty business. And they don't want to give it up. I'm doing that tapping because I'm a little ticked off. Anyway, this is part one. I'm going to get back to you. I'm late today uploading because I have been accepted into the YouTube Partnership Program. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know exactly where this is going or how it's going to go, but I am prepared to get my merchandise out. T-shirts, caps, bags. I've got some ideas for some things for the Information Nation. And you don't know what you don't know. That's my catchphrase, and I was going to patent it, or at least copyright it, but it seems I can't. I'm protected because I've been using it ever since I've been on this broadcast. So it is associated with what nobody told me after 65. So I'm not really too much worried about it, but I do want to thank you for your support, for sharing, for liking, for hitting that bell. I'm not quite there yet. So I haven't received any money, that's for sure. But I have been accepted into the partnership program. What a milestone, what a joy, and I certainly thank you from the bottom of my heart. And of course, I owe it all to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. All right. So if you find that any of this information I've given you has been helpful or useful, share it. Send it to somebody. give somebody else some information and tell them to stay tuned, because I'm going to have more for you. Okay? And remember, you don't know what you don't know. Thanks for listening.